Welcome to the Cincy Postcast. I'm your host, Kevin Wallace, and before we get into today's episode, I want to tell you about our sponsor, Streetside Brewery. One of the best, nay, the best Cincinnati brewery you will find in Cincinnati. They are located in the historic Columbia Tusculum neighborhood at 4003 Eastern Avenue with one of the coolest venues you can get to. And I mean coolest in that it's relaxed. It's a nice, easy environment. The patio is great. The beers are flowing. And it is such a really, really cool spot to be. It's one of my favorite places to just go grab a drink after work. Always a good time there. And maybe the best part about Streetside is the number of events that they are doing this week. On Friday, it's the Brew Cause for the Hub, where they are doing a night of fundraising for the Cincinnati Recycling and Reuse Hub. Really good cause there from 6 to 9 on Friday. Then you got live music. Tim Snyder from 3 to 6 on Saturday. Kyle English from 7 to 10 on the patio. Again, on Saturday. You got Jim Kelly doing live music from 3 to 6 on Sunday. And that evening on Sunday is karaoke with Pascal Karaoke. Awesome events happening over at Streetside. Check them out. Or if you can't make it to the tap room, go buy a case at wherever you are buying your next beer. Enjoy Streetside. A huge thank you to Streetside for sponsoring this and so many other episodes of the Postcast. And on today's episode, I mean, you know why you're here. You know why you're here. You know why we're all here. 6-1 over Inter Miami. They were the number one team on the table going into the weekend. They're the number two team, leaving with one FC Cincinnati right on top. It's been a long time since it's felt that good in TQL Stadium to see a victory that big against a team that was that hyped going into this one. Awesome evening. We recap it. We live every single goal. It's a good time. In part two, I was able to talk to Reece Meister, vice president of the Pride. He was in the Bailey during that match. I needed to know, what was the environment like? What was it like being in the belly of the beast? We wrap it up in part three with some Miles Robinson Olympic roster news and your Patreon questions. I don't know why I talked this long. Let's get to it. 6-1. This is your Postcast. Joining me to talk about all of that and more, I am joined by the one member of the Postcast you'd expect to be traveling around Europe, but isn't. Joined by Grayson. Grayson, after a game like that, how are we feeling? Have you recovered?
You know, it's interesting with a game like that because you're like, you come out of it, you're so happy. It's 6-1, and you know, people are chatting about it online. People are chatting about it in the Discord server. You're out and about on the town. Everyone is just having a great time. And then, you know, you wake up the next day and like nothing in your life is different. And it's like, you know, I really felt like we'd all turned a corner with this 6-1.
Right.
So I'll say that if, at least for me, I can't really say that the 6-1 is like has given me like a new lease on life, but it was certainly a great Saturday night.
It sounds like, if anything, the 6-1 put the rest of your life into perspective in a way that wasn't exactly charitable.
Right. I mean, look, if this team wasn't gonna like imbue my life with some meaning after the 6-1, it's never gonna happen.
Right. It is funny that like a loss would really dampen the mood over the next couple of days for sure. And a win, you definitely feel good. Don't get me wrong. You don't ever feel as good as like the big disappointing loss feels 48 hours, 72 hours later. It is funny that difference there. Yeah, I will say we don't have Chief for the episode. I know a lot of people are missing Chief's takes. Chief and Mrs. Chief are, as I said before, or at least alluded to, traveling around Europe. I was promised a audio recording from Chief. I don't have it. And given that it is only getting later over there, I don't think we're going to get it. So maybe something from the Chief pops up later this week, or maybe shows up afterwards. I don't know. He's a very mysterious individual. But yeah, no, we've got to talk about this game. Man, it feels so good to have finally seen, because it's been a while, right? It's been a while that a game has been built up like this for FCC. Dare I say, a Pat Noonan FCC team. And not only did FCC rise to the occasion, they surpassed the occasion with their performance. And I understand there's a million and one other things going on off the field that contribute to maybe why Miami looked exactly the way they did. But you still don't expect 6-1 going into this one. Before this game, nobody was predicting blowout victory. So I don't know what to say. I just want to be like, damn, isn't this cool?
Let's talk about the lineup for a second.
Okay.
Right. Miami, obviously missing some players.
Yes.
Okay. They had, I believe, first of all, they had the highest paid player on the field. Busquets is making like $9 million.
Yes.
Okay. They had the most expensive player by transfer fee paid, which was Redondo.
Yep.
$7.5 million or whatever they paid for him.
Yep.
You got Campana, who is or was a designated player. Christoph is their regular starter at center back.
Yep.
Taylor has started a lot of games for them. Gressel, another player making more than $1 million a year. U.S. men's national team player.
Perennial all-star.
Yeah. Kremasky is, I think is viewed far and wide as a big up and coming talent that I think like even Messi has tried to convince him to choose Argentina. Or at least maybe that's something people were just saying, but there was some chatter, I think, that he had at least been in contact with the Argentine youth setup. He's a dual nat of American and Argentine.
Yeah, definitely one of the most hyped youth prospects in MLS, and is a regular contributor, regular starter for Miami.
Yeah. And Drake Callender.
Yeah, and Callender, who
is also somebody who has been linked heavily with the he's played a lot with the men's national team. He's actually gotten appearances with the national team, unlike Celentano. He's somebody who some of the more, self-loathing FC Cincinnati fans like to say that they, rate Callender above Celentano. Like,
right.
That's something I've definitely heard, as ridiculous as it as it may sound,
right.
on July 7th, 2024. So like, and I know part of this is just people that work for the league pumping the league up.
Of course. Right.
But like, people was like, Miami, this is the deepest team in MLS history.
Yeah.
Right.
Most talented team ever assembled.
Tata Martino, supposed to be the best coach in MLS, or one of the best coaches ever in MLS. And, was a Mexican national team coach, was coach of friggin' Barcelona, where he did about as poor a job as any Barcelona coach had done in our lifetimes.
Right.
But he was the coach of Barcelona.
He's a manager that I think I've got the timeline right. Him and Berhalter were hired at roughly the same time or at similar time periods.
I think so, yeah.
And a lot of U.S. men's national team fans wanted Tata Martino for the U.S. men's national team job, right up until they saw how well he did with Mexico. But that was something that a lot of people were wanting, that this guy should have been in charge of that program. Absolutely, he comes highly regarded.
Yeah, it's hard to tell how much of this stuff to like ever really credit, but like
right.
It was being spoken as if it was some type of established fact that Martino wanted the U.S. job, but the Federation didn't even consider him because his English isn't good enough.
Right. They've always made that a priority. Yeah.
Right. Which is just, I don't know. Like, I don't know about any of this. Right. But this is what people speak into fact. So like, this is a team like Miami. They didn't use, they had, they even had guys on the bench that they could have used or didn't use or whatever. But yeah, I mean, were they at full strength? No. Were we at full strength? No. Did Miami have the harder go of it as far as absences? Yeah. But was this a good team that they put out? I think by all accounts, if you take people at their word, they talk about these players and talk about Miami. Yeah. That's a team that you could reasonably expect to go out and get a result, a lot in MLS.
And is a team that, as currently constructed with Copa, players missing, had won the last 4 games without Messi and Suarez. And like we said, sure, there's some yellow card suspensions leading into this one, but it wasn't out of necessity that they put Busquets at center back. That was a weird tactical decision from Tata Martino. They had at least 2 center backs, like have played there before in their career, center backs on the bench. So like that was an option. And I understand Busquets played center back in his career. Don't get me wrong. But it's a little different when he's facing a full speed, Luca Rosciano and Lucho Acosta. That's just a little different for sure. But that goes into what the manager's thinking and what they thought and what had been getting results for them. So yeah, I'm happy to give a little bit of credit here that they are missing players. But as you pointed out, if this team was rolled out in Chicago, for example, if somehow all of these guys were under contract in Chicago, MLS Extra Time wouldn't be able to stop talking about how amazing this Chicago Fire team is and how they're going to be a super dangerous, plucky team in the playoffs and that nobody wants to play them, blah, blah, blah. So, yes.
So there were 3 changes from their starting lineup that beat Charlotte on Wednesday.
Okay.
So,
right. And what, 2 of those are because of the suspensions, right? So
yeah, right.
And then one's a tactical choice. Fair enough, But also, it's really nice to be on the receiving end, or the winning end of just fate working out this way. We saw it in the playoffs last year where, sure, we can run down the laundry list of excuses of guys either not fully fit or not available for this game. Oh, by the way, we didn't have Matt Miazga, Nick Hagglund, or Malik Pinto in this one. And I'm not saying Malik Pinto is some amazing minutes eater on this team, but that's vital midfield depth. He's literally the only other midfielder on the team other than the starters who wasn't available in this game. Corey Baird was just coming back from injury. So this wasn't exactly the fullest of strength teams either.
Franco Negri, who started in place of Jordi Alba at left back, makes basically 3 times on base salary makes nearly 3 times what Yamil Assad makes. On a guaranteed comp level, makes almost 4 times as much as what Yamil Assad makes.
Damn. That's like, what are we doing here, folks?
Yamil Assad came out of that game with a goal and an assist.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And was a unrestricted free agent in MLS terms.
Right. Anybody could have had him.
Miami could have used him by looking at this game. You know, somebody actually cheap and can actually contribute. Imagine that. Imagine having to actually play by the salary rules. Miami could never. And yet, all of that combines to a 6-1 demolition of Inter Miami, of a team that, they get a goal in this one, just enough to keep it interesting. But outside of maybe a 10-minute stretch from that, 15th minute to 25th minute, and then a couple of minutes to start the second half, this was all FCC. This was the most exciting, the most high-flying offense we've seen. A bunch of dudes just trying shit out there. This was so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
I want to keep going with the big questions, but I'll read off the lineup quickly just so we have some context of what we're talking about here.
Roman the other context.
Please.
The other thing is the guy that Miami started at right back.
Please.
Is a young Argentine they got on loan.
Oh yes, that's right.
To replace one DeAndre Yedlin. So
Yedlin's actual replacement, who again through loans and shenanigans, as we've seen and benefited from, was able to be brought in to replace Yedlin, who was seen as too expensive, but they probably moved him out of the way to help bring in guys like him. So yes,
well, he's the profile of the player that they've been gravitating toward,
right?
Like a younger Argentine.
Yeah, and that was the thing with Redondo, for example, that they like, not to bring up the Brenner Tinder meme or whatever that FCC sent out. Like Redondo was connected to Real Madrid at one point, and some huge teams in Europe had been scouting him. There's a reason why Miami had to pay $8 or $9 million or whatever to bring him in on a U22 deal. Like they spent some coin on these guys. Just because they're not on the cover of EAFC 24 doesn't mean they're not somebody out there. Okay, so the FCC lineup very quickly. Roman Celentano in goal. From left to right on the back line, Ian Murphy, Miles Robinson, Alvis Powell. Yamil Assad as your left wing back with DeAndre Yedlin as your right wing back. Buka and Wobodo holding down the central midfield. Ahead of them, dueling number 10s, Lucho Acosta, Luca Orishano, and ahead of them, the DP striker was here all along, Yuya Kubo, starting up top. And I bring that up specifically. Grayson, do we need to bring in a DP number 10 on this team?
That's a good question, right?
Like what? Why? Like, I understand midfield depth is a thing that we will need to address and should be addressing. And sure, center back depth. We have an embarrassment of riches up top between Orishano, Yuya Kubo, Lucho Acosta, who's made his way up there. This is not even including regular starters Kevin Kelsey and Dado up top. There is some fella named Aaron Bupenza on the bench as well. I'm not sure if you've heard of him. What are we trying to replace? This team can score goals.
Yeah. I mean, I do think that they probably want somebody who would start where Kubo started. Somebody who's not just like a target forward, as I assume who they would be targeting with like that DP9.
Right.
And can play. But like what they did yesterday, you really question like, is Orishano just starting next to Lucho forever? and we just have one forward, and then that obviously, pushes Kevin Kelsey to the bench,
which U23 or U22 player, you kind of expect him there. Also, if you're looking at exercising that purchase fee, you probably want to sandbag his stats a little bit. Stop scoring so many goals, Kevin. You can do that next year once we've got you for $2 million.
Yeah, and then it does become interesting because, like, obviously, if you have a DP9 on the team who's not playing, Aaron Bupenza,
yeah,
he probably should not be on the team.
Yeah, that's a misuse of resources for sure.
So then you have an open DP spot. You want to use it. I certainly, as a fan, want to see my team using all the DP spots. You look at where the need is. Well, the most immediate need is center back. Don't love the idea of a DP center back.
Me either. But I could be sold on it. That's what I'm saying.
But you go back to, like, that certainly wasn't the plan.
No,
like, that's not part of, like, their multi-year plan.
No.
So, like, I could be sold, I think, on... Well, I could be sold on basically anything. Whatever they do in the window, I'm going to support and just think is the best thing they could have done. Yeah. But, like, if you're like, well, can we get, like, a DP center back on a very short term deal to run out the season?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not laughably dumb, right?
No. Because if you go and get a DP defensive midfielder or box-to-box guy, you have to replace Buka or Wobodo. Wobodo's already a DP, so that feels, again, like a bad use of resources to just try to push Wobodo this season to the bench. I don't mind the idea of just, like, every 2 years we bring in somebody better than a starter and all of our starters become bench players over time. That's not a bad roster construction. It's a way to keep everything running on that treadmill, right? But it makes no sense to try to go out and replace Buka or Wobodo. That's kind of silly right now.
Well, I'm not in a hurry after his last couple of games to move Pavel to the bench.
Right. And while Wobodo isn't the greatest defensive midfielder MLS has ever seen this season, as he may have been last season, he's still extremely effective and won't be a DP next year. So it's not like you're worried about carrying a declining player on a huge contract over and over, right?
Now, the one thing
for years.
The one thing you think about with OB is, since he's just got that option year, he's probably talking about, I need a new deal or I need to go somewhere else. Right? Because you don't see a lot of players who have options.
Right.
Just like, I mean, I think players with options prefer not to be playing on, like, the last year of their deal.
Yeah. It's usually not a great sign for the relationship generally that is happening. A player's either going to walk or is frustrated with how things are going.
I assume that those conversations are happening, or at least have been broached.
Yeah.
And people know where their positions are. So if, like, you don't think that OB is going to sign an extension at a number that makes you happy, kind of this season would be the time to move it.
Yeah.
When you can get a transfer fee.
Whew.
But this is kind of This is kind of a silly thing to talk about, right?
We veered off course here.
The only reason that would even be talked about is because of the Weston McKennie stuff.
Right.
Which maybe we can talk about whether there's any updates on that later. But DP center back, maybe?
It kind of makes sense, especially for this season. Like you said, if there's, for whatever reason, a DP center back deal on the table for the remainder of this year, and then it's a loan thing or something like that, it makes sense.
Yeah. So the question is, so you have a couple of options, right? You have potentially 2 more U22 spots.
Yep.
You have the budget relief for putting Miazga on season-ending injury.
Yep.
And then you have the open DP spot from
the
presumably moving Bupenza out.
Yes. That's a lot to play with.
It's a lot to play with, and I would posit that, like, as long as you get effective players from the spots that you use, it doesn't matter so much that, like, that striker signing has to be the DP, right? Because you could make the striker your replacement player.
Yeah.
There's no requirement that the replacement player play the same position as the player you put on season-ending injury.
Yeah.
So you could make the striker like a TAM player, whatever budget relief you get back from Miazga, use a DP tag on center back, use another U22 spot on a center back, use a U22 spot on midfield depth. However you do it, you know, there's a ton of options there. And especially if the center back is not a like long-term multi-year deal, I don't really see a problem with using a DP spot on it, given what all pieces are in the team currently.
Right. That's what makes, and it's silly to go here after the Miami game, right? Like after a 6-1 beatdown.
We just go where we go. We can turn back to the game in a second.
For sure. But it makes a lot of things, I don't know, it pulls a lot of stuff to the forefront because, one, the transfer window opens in 2 weeks-ish. Like this is
a little under 2 weeks.
This is, you know, front of mind for, I'll tell you, Chris Albright. I'm sure he enjoyed the win, but you've got to take this team and equip it to not just win the Supporters Shield, which may or may not be the stated goal. I'm sure they would like to win it. But the goal here is to win MLS Cup. And beating this Miami team is great, and you're seeing more and more, and you're learning more and more lessons here. Like, Assad is a viable starter at left wing back until we see him not able to perform there. Like, this is exciting. Luca Orishano, before signing with FC Cincinnati, had primarily been a right winger and attacking player. And not unlike Alvaro Barreal, they converted him to a left wing back. But the more they've let him go back to his natural position, quote unquote, the better he looks. And while this is not a team that plays with wingers, what we saw against Miami is about as close as you'll see. And it looked damn good with Acosta and Orishano out there. And so now when you're looking at your shopping list in the transfer window and you see things like this, you do have to start maybe adjusting your priors, as the once great Nate Silver would say, that this is like, you've got to start reassessing where you actually stand. Because if you're still trying to desperately fit a DP midfielder into this team, last night would make that feel a little silly. And I said it before, a DP striker almost feels silly because, and you're 100% right, Grayson, but if you're looking for somebody with goal scoring ability but positional flexibility, you're just describing Yuya Kubo. Like, what are you trying to replace here? So that's why I think your mind immediately goes to that of, okay, so we know the team wants to make a big splash this transfer window, and yet this team as assembled is putting together performances like this. what on earth is the plan? Who on this team are you saying, all right, we got to drop 3 of these guys quickly if we want to win? Sure, Alvis Palace center back isn't ideal, but after that, I struggle to point out guys that you desperately need to be changing. It's a very fun problem to have.
It is interesting because it's like you have 2 things competing in your head. One is the team's needs are clearly primarily at center back.
Yes.
I would agree with you. I think that the needs are also that it would also be nice to have a locked in number 1 stud forward.
Yeah.
That wasn't also the entirety of our midfield depth. And our right wing back depth.
Yes.
So like it's like clearing away the spot on the team that needs help as center back, and it needs like a top level player, not just depth. But the other thing in your head is DP center backs are a bad idea.
Like generally a terrible investment or the sign of a low ambition team.
Right. And it's just like, maybe sometimes no. Maybe sometimes yes, maybe sometimes no.
I mean, if anything, and God, this is just pure brown nosing, so we can convince FCC comms to let us interview Dado Valenzuela this week. If anything, it is a testament to Chris Albright doing so well budget shopping up to this point that there is suddenly the roster flexibility to allow you to go get a DP center back, and it wouldn't actually break the team because you have a guy on a minimum salary in Yamil Assad putting in DP or at the very least all-star contributions at left wing back.
Well, come on, Assad's not putting in DP.
Not DP, but he's certainly putting in an all-star performance. If he could do that performance day in and day out all season, yeah, he's a shoo-in for a best 11 setup. Or maybe it's just Lucho elevates any left wing back we plug in over there, and if we converted London Agedu to left wing back, he would suddenly look like I don't know. Insert Brazilian left back here of your choice. I don't know. But the budget shopping has been so good. It's like if you were working through a grocery list and you had to spend $200 and you got to the end of the list and you suddenly had $40 left. And the last thing you had on your list was like hamburger buns. You bet your ass you're getting the best hamburger buns that the Cookout has ever seen.
Yeah.
Is it where you would have budgeted $40? Not quite, but given how everything else broke out, you could make the adjustment there.
Yep.
I don't know.
Yeah, and I think the other question mark to putting a button on segment 1 roster construction. What is Corey Baird's position on the team?
We need an 8th striker. I've always said that. We need to make sure the 8th striker position is locked on. Man, it's funny how we started the season thinking, oh, Corey Baird, is he going to be the Brandon Vasquez replacement? To having to remind yourself Corey Baird is on the roster, let alone the first team. I hopefully he has recovered well. He was available in this one on the bench. Yes, he was on the bench. Didn't sub in. Hey, him and Bupenza both were the starting strikers at one point on this team. Here we are now. I don't know how much trade value Corey Baird has out there, but if I were him,
I think attackers have trade value.
Absolutely.
He's not on a shocking number, and on his track record, he's he's a starter quality.
Yeah.
For a number of MLS teams.
And this is no shade to him, but Dom Badji just signed a deal with DC United. And if Dom Badji has, first team minutes left in him in MLS, Corey Baird will find a club that will use him.
Maybe it'll be us.
It's God, I mean, if 9 other guys, literally, if like 7 other guys get injured, yes, we will play them up top, and we will feel confident about it. Let's talk about this game. Grayson, of the two of us, only one of us was in the stadium. I'm assuming. I actually haven't talked to you about this. What was it like? How was it in the stadium for this one?
Oh, it was top experience. One of the best. It was so good that you had like Lucho yelling at the Bailey to not chant what it was chanting. But the I mean, you could tell it was full. I think it was a heavily home favorite crowd. I know Messi wasn't there, but that's still something that you do see more Miami jerseys out and about than other MLS teams. I heard that a 98 Degree pulled the sword. So that's cool.
Drew Lachey, not Nick.
Yeah, Drew Lachey, Broadway's own, played Mark Cohen in Rent and Seymour in Little Shop of Horrors.
Wow.
I don't know what else I don't know if he's done anything else. But so that was fun for some of us who didn't see it. National anthem, incredible.
Awesome.
They called this, I think her name was Soprano Jacqueline Eccles.
What a cool name.
You know, when Soprano wasn't her first name, it was her title.
Well, yes, but
when they intro the singer with soprano,
you're getting something good.
You're getting something good. My understanding is she's in the Paul McCartney opera that Cincinnati Opera's putting on this summer.
Oh, yeah.
At least that's what it seemed. That's what seemed to be the case online. So that's neat.
TQL Stadium has killed it with anthem singers this year in particular. Yeah. I can't think of anybody who was poor, and I can think of plenty who were awesome. They've done a good job with that.
Yeah, and I'm not saying you need an opera singer every week, but I do like the mixing up styles.
Yes.
I think it's fun to showcase different styles, and I thought she was extremely clean and hit some real fun notes as part of it. And I can't remember a more fun time than when the Bailey was singing "Na na na na, hey hey goodbye" to Sergio Busquets.
Hitting him with a Cyclones classic. Not that Cincinnati invented that, but man, that's a good moment.
I just imagine him being so disgusted in the moment. Like who the fuck are these people? To say this to me?
We're jumping well out of order here.
That's
Did
okay.
he intentionally get sent off just to leave the game?
I mean, he seemed not happy that he got sent off, and he he failed to leave the field in a timely manner. So I think we'll see his name in the discipline report this week.
We'll see.
So we'll get to enjoy it again when he gets fined. I would like to know what he said to Chris Pensa to get that second yellow so quickly.
Yeah.
So from my angle, it looked like he put his finger out and pushed him. Because I was directly behind Busquets, but you look at the tape, there was no contact. So clearly it's whatever was set.
Yeah.
And then speaking of Penso, while I'm not willing to hand it to ISIS here, the one thing I did appreciate about his job was how he did not seem to be very indulgent of what Miami wanted to do.
Yes.
Like he stopped play briefly to lecture Campana, I assume, for going down easy in the box, trying to fake a penalty. Various times throughout the game, you could see him like kind of shrug at Miami players when they were complaining about foul calls. Like, what do you expect me to, like, what do you want me to do here?
Right.
Like,
right.
I have seen Miami in other games really, I feel like, get a very long rope when it comes to interacting with officials. And while I am no fan of the officials, I do think that, I do think that they're well within their rights and should be encouraged to, like, kind of make players cut the crap a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. They are there to help manage the game. Now, sometimes that ends up taking, like, the third team seems to take it upon themselves to stage manage the game, and they're there playing air traffic controller and not so much just letting the game play out the way it's going to play out. But yeah, they are there to help manage the game and make sure the game is actually flowing in some reasonable way. And it was nice to see that. And again, not to hand it to them, but this is 2 games in a row now where it's felt like, I don't know, are we getting a higher level of official because now we are seen as a better team? Like, have we been given a slightly different direction from Pro or the PSRA that, actually more people are watching these, we should probably stop awarding random ass penalties against them these days? I'll take it, whatever it is, because this has been a breath of fresh air for a long time coming now. So, yeah, I not too many complaints. It's hard to have a single complaint in a 6-1 game. Let's talk about this just briefly. Christoph gets their 1 goal in the 21st minute. This is not the first goal of the game, but I just want to get it out of the way. It's set piece defense again for FC Cincinnati. This has been a struggle earlier in the year, and you can only assume until more center back help shows up is just going to continue to be an issue to keep an eye on. He's open back to back, like in two chances back to back. He finally heads one home. It's a disappointment. But ultimately, why we call it an MLS clean sheet, because they're gonna get one on you, and so this was disappointing, but ultimately a blip, a speed bump, a traffic calming speed lump or whatever on the way to a 6-1 victory here.
So I'll say this about the goal,
please.
In the before the game, I was thinking Miami's big goal threat is going to be Gressel crossing the ball.
Right.
Is Alves Powell the start?
Right.
I thought, and I think in the moment I was like, oh yeah, that's that's what happens, right?
Right.
But I thought Powell was really good.
Yeah.
For most of the game. So
especially going up against Robert Taylor, who
I don't want to be too hard on him. I thought he was very solid, very kind of just like positionally where he should be, and did a nice job containing and not giving up anything, in the run of play.
Yeah. He has had some pretty awful giveaways in more recent games, but yeah, in this one it was pretty well buttoned up. Good to see that. Hopefully he's healthy. I haven't seen anything. He comes off in the 56th minute. He asked to be subbed out, which is never a good sign. it was very funny. Again, just seeing like the weird positional flexibility on this team that when Powell goes out, it is Sergio Santos going up because everybody on this team can play right wing back. Apparently, Yedlin moved into center back, Kubo moved to right wing back, and Santos went up top. But
Kubo
it's just very.
Kubo went to right wing back and immediately scored.
Yes, of course. Yeah, right.
So about just one little aside about Kristoff.
Yeah.
I saw after the game he was talking to Kevin Kelsey.
Oh yeah.
And I was just remembered. Oh, they both, Kelsey came from Shakhtar and Kristoff is Ukrainian, played at Shakhtar. It doesn't look like they ever overlapped.
Ah, okay.
So like they didn't play together at Shakhtar. Kelsey went to Shakhtar the same window that Kristoff left Shakhtar.
Okay.
But I thought it was a nice moment, and they were chatting with each other, and then they give a little bro hug.
Yeah.
At the end. And so yeah, just
It's
wanted to
funny.
highlight that.
Yeah, I would like to know more, and it would be super interesting to get this. Like, do guys do research on the roster ahead of time? Because it's probably not common knowledge that Kevin Kelsey was playing at Shakhtar Donetsk. Now, granted, he's on loan. And then, Kristoff is from Ukraine, so they may have stayed in apartments near each other or something.
Kristoff played for Shakhtar.
Yeah. And he's Ukrainian. I'm just saying, they might have lived in the same building for all we know. Right.
I mean, they certainly know a lot of the same people, right?
Exactly.
If Kelsey knows any of his teammates.
Right. Which hopefully he picked up a name or two while he was there. And or coaches even, all of that. But does Kristoff look that up? Does Kelsey look that up? I'm curious, what goes into that? Does somebody else on the coaching staff say, "Hey, heads up, you guys might know a lot of people"? I'm just super curious how that comes about, because it seems silly that they'd be sitting there Googling the other team, but also I feel like you would glance at the Wikipedia page of the other team. I don't know. That's how I would do it, and that's why I'm not a soccer player. So let's get into these FC Cincinnati goals. There are 6 of them to get into. The first one, I mean, it's not really, I guess it's a counterattack. It's slightly in transition. Starts with Assad carrying the ball up the field. Hard foul, but gets the ball to Orishano, who at this point is playing on the left side. This is that fun positional flexibility that playing Lucho and Orishano at the same time offers you. Lucho is way behind this play, and it is 1, 2, 3 FC Cincinnati players versus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Miami players in transition. You got Yedlin way out on the right, and Kubo is way out ahead of this play, offside for a good chunk of it. Eventually moves his way centrally and slows up his run just enough to bring himself back onside. Perfectly timed pass from Orishano, crosses the ball perfectly into the center of the box. Yuya Kubo gets it around Calendar. Calendar does get a hand on it, but it bounces into the goal. This is fun. This is this team hitting on transition, and this is punishing 2 old, I'll say, in world soccer terms, center backs in transition. Cool moment for Kubo to get back on the score sheet so quickly here.
Yeah. And it really was a great run by Kubo, because he stays ahead of the defenders and then slows up just in time.
Yeah.
I mean, you love to see it. It was with that goal, Kubo equaled Brandon's league tally.
Wow.
Last year. So that's something.
I forget, is Kubo at 10 goals now?
He's at 9.
9. Okay. When we had him on, we had talked about afterwards that the hunt for double digits for him that has eluded him since he left Japan. So
yeah, so it counts. It depends on whether you count, I guess, the Belgian league playoff as league goals or not, because between the Belgian season and the playoff, he had 11 goals twice.
Okay.
But I'm not going to count the playoffs.
Yeah. Which, by the way, if anybody tells you that they don't do playoffs in Europe, Belgium is a fantastic counter argument. They do one of the craziest things that I absolutely love, and I don't have it in front of me, and I'm sure I'll get parts of this wrong. But essentially, they play half of the season in a round robin, and at a certain point, they split the league in two so that there's a top half of the league and a bottom half of the league. The bottom half of the league essentially becomes a playoff for relegation, and the top half of the league becomes a playoff for the championship and then European places for the Champions League and whatnot. But they do something sort of goofy like that, and it's not unheard of to do things that look like playoffs in Europe for the overall league title, to say nothing of the tons of playoffs that happen in the actual English league system for promotion, for example. But we move our way. Again, Miami scores the second one here to tie it up 1-1. A very enthusiastic Inter Miami, I think we can call fan journalist tweeting out, "That's this team's resolve, the mental toughness that you love to see." And then it all comes unwound in this one. Second goal, this is Lucho putting on a Lucho show. Obi wins the ball, showing us he's still got it. How dare you doubt him? Obi wins the ball, just dumps the ball off to Lucho, because of course you have to. Lucho then takes on all three of Miami's defenders that are left in the box. Tons of patience, makes Kristoff and Busquets look a little silly, and just waits for his exact moment, fires it far post, across goal, across calendar. He's not expecting this shot to come in. Busquets has a half-hearted lunging slide tackle-ish thing. It looks like he slide canceled, to use a FIFA video game term, and looks silly.
I do want to point out that in the build-up to this goal,
please,
in the build-up to the goal, Lucho advances the ball with a Rabona.
Yes. Yes. To Obi, right? I think that's who's
to Assad, I think.
Oh, okay.
And then we lose the ball briefly, and Obi wins it back.
Man. It just the pushing forward from Lucho to continue to fight for this is awesome. And this goal is just peak Lucho, that like he is so patient. He is so calm in front of goal that so many guys, even at the highest levels of the sport, feel rushed. They feel the pressure. I'm in the box. I need to get a shot off or I look silly. I need to do this. I'm going to take this. I'm not going to lay it off. I'm not going to pass it, which there's an argument that he maybe should have laid it off for DeAndre Yedlin, but what's a Lucho goal highlight if not for three guys being wide open at the same time as the goal being scored? But yeah, man, this is what makes Lucho so much fun. It reminded apparently the MLS intelligentsia that it would be really cool if Lucho played for the U.S. men's national team. That was fun to see some of those takes pop up. My favorite, though, is, and I will continue to use this term, the QSMNT fans immediately pile on and say he won't be eligible until March of 2026. I think that if you are a very strict reader of FIFA's rules, that is certainly possible, but that there are exceptions and grievances filed and exceptions filed and all sorts of things, including that he may have maintained his residency in DC during that time. So there's a lot of wiggle room there. Don't write off Lucho to the national team just yet. And also, I don't give a shit. If he's available a week before the World Cup, you still got to add him. We don't have a guy on the team that can do this. Lucho Acosta is playing right now the way USMNT fans hope Gio will play 5 years from now. Like that, yeah. He is living that potential now. You gotta add him. I don't care.
Yeah, and what people are referring to, because I'm not sure if it was entirely clear from Kevin's explanation, what people are referring to is there's the citizenship piece, but there's also just a FIFA eligibility piece. So the FIFA rule involves a continuous period of residency, and whether Lucho's brief time in Mexico cut off his continuous residency in the US or not. Honestly, anybody who sits here who tries to say they can confidently say whether Lucho will be immediately eligible for the men's national team or not, if and when he becomes a citizen, I think they're blowing smoke. Mm-hmm. I think the only people who could answer this question work for FIFA, the U.S. Soccer Federation, or maybe whatever advisors Lucho is using to help him navigate the citizenship process.
Yeah, exactly. So 2 dueling requirements there, one for citizenship, one for FIFA. You can thank Qatar for some of these rules. I think it was like 2002 or 2004. Qatar, which is very weird about citizenship. Like a huge number of people you would sort of assume are Qatari citizens are not Qatari citizens. But back in like the early 2000s, they gave 3 Brazilians who were living in Germany Qatari citizenship just to add them to their national soccer team. And FIFA stepped in and added a whole bunch of rules about how you had to prove residency and some sort of ancestral connection. That's why you see a lot of guys with like Polish grandparents are, eligible for the Polish national team and things like that.
Yeah, people are saying around 90% of Qatar's population is non-citizens.
Yeah, that's wild. Like even just being born into a family of other citizens, I don't even think is a guarantee, depending on what house you live in and things like that. So, the fact that they were just giving them out to Brazilians playing soccer in Germany, kind of funny. They're clearly cheating their own rules there. And it wasn't but 2 minutes later, Buka getting on the end of a Lucho corner kick. Who let this guy take corner kicks? I thought we had banned this a while ago. Doing his best Alvaro Barreal impression. Like, it's not as cleanly hit. It's not entirely in the air, but it is a nice volley off of the corner kick that bounces right into goal. I mean,
I'm gonna push back on the not as cleanly hit point.
That's fair.
It's not as striking.
Yes.
Of a volley.
It's not as hard hit.
But after watching the replay of the goal a few times, I think he's just primarily focused on placement.
Yeah. He's got Calendar going the wrong way, which is right. Not that he did anything particularly wrong. When the ball moves to your left, you should probably shift to the left a little bit. But yeah, Buka sends it opposite direction. That's gonna burn you. And the advantage it had on Alvaro's is it wasn't deflected. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Alvaro was not deflected. You and Jonah can go to hell. Man, but 2 minutes later, it's all of a sudden 3-1, and you think, man, 3-1 going into halftime. I'm like, don't give up a goal. Don't give up a goal. It's all it's in my head. Don't want to lose momentum, but man, you feel like it's just going your way. Everything is looking up for FCC, and it doesn't even end there. It was enough to just like, you couldn't catch your breath. The Shalalas aren't even ending before they have to start right back up again. And minutes before halftime, Yamil Assad just earning every single cent of his league minimum paycheck here. Lucho crosses the ball, switches field, crosses the ball from the right all the way to the left, sends it deep into the box, right on the end line. Assad keeps it in. Calendar comes out to challenge for it. And actually gets a hand or a foot. It takes a funky deflection up, but it creates enough separation that Calendar's able to get up and then immediately has to retreat. He either has to dive at Assad's feet and hope it's not a penalty, or he has to retreat here. He chooses to retreat, and Assad just finds the one angle that he can get past both Calendar and, I'm not going to be able to make out who it is, whoever is standing on the line in the goal, and places it perfectly. And it's the backbreaker. It's 4-1. We're a minute away from it being the end of halftime, or the end of the half. And man, the Bailey's feeling good. The stadium's feeling good.
Right.
It's
right before it.
Yeah.
Calendar actually saved what would maybe have been the best goal of the game.
That's okay. So I couldn't remember exactly when this happens, but yeah, Lucho has.
It's in
please,
the 40.
Please.
It's in the 45th minute.
Okay.
Kubo passes to Lucho. Lucho does this really nice back heel to a streaking Orishano. Orishano takes the dribble. Like, no one really gets close to him. He takes a nice shot, places it far post, just Calendar gets a hand on it.
Yeah.
And this is a game where I came out of it and I had to keep reminding myself that Orishano did not in fact score. Because he had it just felt like he had scored because he had so many of those because he had so many opportunities. And he just looked really nice all game.
I've been staring at the rundown of who scored in what minute. If I was not looking at that and you asked me if he had scored, I would have told you yes. Absolutely. That's exactly how it felt in this game. He was all over. And yeah, we've already beat this to death, but you think, damn, maybe he's the DP striker we've needed all along. Like, this is so good that we're getting this level of production out of a guy that, again, according to the MLSPA numbers, making league minimum. We've got, yeah.
Yeah, and so we could talk about him again with goal number 5.
Yeah, right. Like, just absolutely. Is that the one?
So he dribbles it along the end line, just keeps it in, and finds Kubo.
That's when he convinces Busquets that Busquets should probably leave this game immediately.
Yeah, that's when Busquets quit.
Just absolutely just goes right around him. Busquets is old, and Kubo does get a lucky deflection, but is able to bury that one off of that ball from Orishano, which is awesome. It'll show up later in this episode, but talking to Reece about the Knights made a gut decision to keep the Shalala going into the call for the halftime whistle was cool. It was cool to see the crowd just sticking with it, just sort of hammering it home that this team won't stop scoring. And it did not get easier for Calendar when he has to have the Bailey on a night like that behind him when everything has already gone wrong. Yuya Kubo's second goal of the game. Again, it's crazy what happens when you put a career striker who had success in Europe, a former DP in this league up top, continues to score goals, continues to put them away. And yeah, we have talked about it already, but it's about 10 minutes later, Sergio Busquets, not even 10 minutes later, 5 minutes later, Sergio Busquets shown double yellows, which you don't see often. You definitely don't see with a bona fide superstar in the league. So
and
again,
both for dissent.
yes, he's not the one who was called for the foul.
Campana is called for the foul, and he and Yedlin are kind of laughing about it.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, Busquets is, throwing his fists at the ref and
Campana's not carded for his foul either.
Correct. Right.
Man. And it's at that moment you think, maybe we scored 10.
I still think this team owes me 7 because I was at an away game where we lost 7-1. Just putting that out there.
It was pretty close though.
Pretty close.
We wrap this up. Do we in the 72nd minute? Is that where the scoring ends? That is when the scoring ends. Yes, in the 72nd minute. Dado Valenzuela, not Venezuela. Brian McBride. You need to get that right. Further evidence that the commentators of this league don't actually watch this league. Dado finally gets his goal. This just comes off of the constant pressure that Miami is in at the end of this game. And after a lot of these subs, because if I remember correctly, most of these subs happen before this goal. There are 2 subs after this. But it's clear Lucha is going to be staying in the whole rest of the game. He's not getting subbed out. Assad dribbling in, plays a nice little give and go with Lucho. Assad finds Dado, who 5 holes, old Drake Calendar. We mentioned this before, but there seems to be this internal list both with MLS media and with the U.S. men's national team coaching staff, the USMNT Illuminati, that Calendar is a better goalkeeper than Roman Celentano. Getting nutmegged for the 6th goal in a 6-1 beatdown. It's going to be pretty rough to put on the resume alongside Roman Celentano. So well done, Dado. Well done, Roman, for coming out of this looking like head and shoulders the better keeper. Roman
made his share of really nice saves.
Yeah, and Calendar has some good saves in this game. Don't get me wrong.
No, he had several.
Yes.
Several really impressive saves.
Also gave up 6. So there's something to be said there. I don't know. Grayson, Dado getting his goal. Permanent in ink striker going forward then? Is that how this works?
Yeah, I think that's how that works. He's unbenchable.
Yes. Unplayable, which is my favorite Britishism. It means the exact opposite of what you think it means.
Right, yeah. I hate it.
It's miserable.
Yeah. Well, it's counterintuitive if you speak American English.
Proper English. Yeah, if you ever hear that in an EPL broadcast, so-and-so is unplayable, it means they're really good. It doesn't mean they're really bad. Right. The game ends 6-1. We already did some of the big picture stuff before this. I will say FC Cincinnati becomes the 2nd team ever in the non-shootout era to win, 12 games in 14 matches. They tied a record by the Seattle Sounders. Lucho, with 10 goals and 10 assists already on the season, is damn well outpacing his MVP performance last year. You got to assume if another certain Argentine stays at the Copa America even longer, Lucho may have this award again. It's going to be tough to come up with a counter argument.
So Arango,
yes,
is the argument.
He is the only threat.
He's got one more goal plus assist. Arango
That's
has
pretty good.
17 goals and 11 assists. Lucho's got 10 goals and 17 assists.
And MLS has never awarded a back-to-back MVP award.
Is that right?
It feels right. I think I read that on a broadcast somewhere.
Yeah. So look, Lucho is my MVP. So that goes without saying.
Yes.
This is a situation where complain.
Right.
Okay. But I think if form holds, there's going to be multiple worthy winners this year. It's not like last year where it
was going to be tough.
Seemed to bend over backwards, come with any argument to vote for anybody else. And,
they were desperate when they were bringing up goalkeepers.
Right. Yeah. Last year would have been an absolute joke. This year, our RSL, also a really good team.
Yeah.
So it'd be exciting to watch. It'd be exciting to watch. I think Lucho's going to keep his numbers up.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Just to be able to match what he did, and if not surpass what he did last year, is pretty incredible. Speaking of last year, I had to go back and check. Through 22 games, FC Cincinnati had 48 points. Through 22 games this year, FC Cincinnati has 48 points. 48 points last year was good enough to make the playoffs. I don't know if we expect the math to change on that, but it's probably fair to say we've clinched the playoffs at this point. 49 points was good enough for Nashville to avoid the play-in game. So looking good from that perspective. Again, if you are going to watch what we did last year, FCC won the 23rd game. So something to have in the back of your mind. Shield race wise, or is there anything else about the game that you want to touch on?
Yeah, one quick thing. I forget where I saw it, but somebody was talking about maybe Tata getting mad that FC was still playing forward.
Yeah,
in the game. Miami has scored 6 goals on teams.
Yes.
Multiple times.
Yes.
Shut up. I don't want to hear it.
That was pretty pathetic if that is what was happening. I just a quick glance back through their previous matches. 6-2 versus the New York Red Bulls, May 4th, 4-1 against New England Revolution. Yeah, they've done this a couple of times. They did it last year as well. And
again, we've lost 7-1. So
yeah, we've been on the receiving end of some brutal results. So yeah, we deserve to get a couple of these back. Question for you. Is this the biggest regular season win in FCC history?
No.
Ooh.
Biggest? No. For me,
the number 1 team in the standings is we're the number 2 team. We flip-flop, dare I say, around Grayson, a 6-pointer.
Hey, we were always saying this was a 6-pointer.
They were missing a lot, but yeah.
Here's what I would say. For me, the biggest regular season win is going to be is always going to be the one that won us our first trophy. So clinching the Shield against Toronto. For me, that's the biggest regular season win.
That's a pretty compelling counter argument, especially with how that particular game played out. where they really had to fight for the win. It was a good win. I also think too of the 2022 season finale against DC United. It was a pretty comprehensive victory that going into the game they needed to make the playoffs. Other results made it not matter quite as much, but
beating Crew on the road this year, another big regular season win.
Yeah.
It's just, if you don't win a trophy, a regular season win can't be big.
Damn.
Like, if this win, gives them home field over Miami in the playoffs, and they win MLS Cup, maybe we can talk that.
It's a good point. If this is the highest peak in the season, it'll be a disappointing season.
I think we're going to have a fun season.
I do too. If this is what we did to the number 1 team, now number 2 team, pretty cool. It was also really fun to watch the goal differential on these 2 teams. Watching from home, I had the ability to be a bad sports fan and literally table watch while this was going on. But it was really fun to watch the goal differential flip-flop to the point where we now have a better goal differential than Miami. That was very much not the case going into this one. But it ended up being literally a 10-pointer in this case with the goal differential scoring, and then them having to concede that many goals was very fun. I will also say, just don't look up what Columbus Crew is doing. You don't concern yourself with their last 4 games. Don't concern yourself with the fact that they've won like 15-1 over their last 4 games. Don't worry about that.
Columbus, the one thing about Columbus, don't worry about them. If we keep winning, they can't catch us.
Yes.
Period.
That is true. We've got a pretty good advantage on points.
Even with the games in hand.
Even with the games in hand, yes. They do have to go play LAFC, who is the number 3 team in MLS at the time of this recording. I know there are some West Coast games going on. It looks like LAFC's match with Houston was postponed due to a hurricane impending.
Columbus has a tough schedule. They have LAFC. They have Aston Villa.
That's going to really trip them up.
Yeah.
I mean, look, we get MLS Cup. They can go play in the Conference League in Europe. Okay. It all balances itself out.
They still have Philly twice. I know Philly's not great, but they'll have Miami again.
Good.
They got, it's going to be tough for anyone to catch us, since, I did not mean that. I think we're going to make it hard for, teams are going to have to keep up a very good pace, I think.
Yeah.
To catch us. And,
it feels, it's very funny that, in general, the Eastern Conference is better than the Western Conference. I think that's fair to say at this point in the year. Maybe it's not. Maybe it has balanced out a little bit more. But it feels inevitable that a Shield winner is going to come out of the East, either Cincinnati, Miami, or Columbus. I don't know what to make of that. But LAFC, Real Salt Lake, LA Galaxy, yeah, they've got to maintain a pretty hefty clip to keep pace with us in Miami. And we still have a game in hand on Miami. So that's cool. Even though we played, we got a point on them and a game in hand. Fantastic. Absolutely love that. Anything else before we head on over to part 2 and then part 3?
Nah.
Let's Do it. Okay, part 2 is going to be shorter than normal, but I had to, after a game like that, get the perspective of what it was like in the Bailey. Reached out to Reece Meister, vice president of the Pride, and one of the capos you see down in the belly of the beast of the Bailey, getting the inside scoop on what it was like in the Bailey for such a dramatic and exciting night. Really good conversation with him. After that, we've got part 3 where we're going to touch on Miles Robinson news, answer a couple of Patreon questions, and then get the hell out of here. So enjoy the conversation with Reece. We'll pick it back up in part 3. Before we get to the next part of the episode, I do want to tell you about our sponsor, Cincy Shirts, which is now the home of official Cincy Postcast merch. This is so exciting, and we really never thought we'd see the day, and yet here we are, alive and actually seeing the day. Cincy Shirts has been with FC Cincinnati from the beginning. They've been with the Post for ever now, from the beginning, our very first sponsor. So happy to have them along for this journey. There are 6, count them, 6 different shirts available at this time of recording that you can purchase from their website for real life. This is, again, a real thing that you can do. As I'm sure you know, but I will remind you, they have 3 retail locations, including Fort Mitchell, Loveland, and Oakley Hyde Park, where in those locations, they can print on demand. If they don't have the size of something you want, you can print on demand. I assume this means postcast shirts as well. Give it a shot. Let me know how that goes. If for some reason you do not want to purchase one of our shirts, I won't hold it against you. You can use promo code ThePostCincy. That's all one word, all caps, ThePostCincy, for 10% off your next order. This also works with Postcast shirts, so please don't pay full price. Make sure you knock 10% off for yourself on that one. Spread the code far and wide, I guess, and let them know about Cincy shirts and let them know about the podcast while you're at it. Otherwise, the code doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But again, a huge thank you to Cincy Shirts for sponsoring this episode and so many before it. And if I do see you out there with a t-shirt, I will be embarrassed for you, but I will probably give you a high five and tell you well done. So again, thank you to Cincy Shirts. Thank you to you for buying shirts and using that promo code. Joining me to talk about that game, I've got the vice president of the Pride, who was boots on the ground or maybe even on the railing. I won't tell anybody. We've got Reece Meister, vice president of the Pride. Reece, has your voice recovered from last night?
I think so. I don't know if I sound weird to anybody else, but my ears still haven't, though. That ringing is tremendous.
That is amazing. So I was realizing with the postcast setup this weekend, we only had one voice inside of the stadium and not in the Bailey. And that just was not going to suffice for a game of this magnitude, for the result that ended up being. And I need the perspective. What is your general top line takeaway? How was the Bailey last night?
Cool. If that can be typed into a word, that might be the best way to say it, is just phew. That's probably the most fun I've had in that building since it's been built. I mean, I've had a lot of good times, but crowd was hungry for that. Boys made it very easy to have a good time in that space last night. And I mean, it was our house, like every bit of it. And I mean, I have a handful of moments in my life that I like that makes sports really important to me. And there's a certain sound and feel, like when it gets loud enough and all the right stuff fall together. One of those was the Chicago Fire match back at Nippert. And my most recent one to add to that list was last night's game.
Wow. Yeah, and I'm sure, because we record these all out of order, I'm sure I will bring this up at some point, and probably before this. I feel confident in saying this is the biggest regular season win for FC Cincinnati in its time in MLS. I think it's fair to say this was a hell of a result. The Bailey is getting nothing but praise online, that the crowd and the environment lived up to the moment, maybe even exceeded the moment. What, in your mind, though, as one of the capos, as one of the quite literal cheerleaders in the Bailey, what in your mind makes a good night for the Bailey?
So having that 3,000 like active and engaged the entire like 90 minutes plus, I mean, that's the dream. But the reality is that every game is going to have this like peaks and valleys. Honestly, it's what makes a great game is sometimes the give and change of like, matches with like Philly and stuff like that. But I mean, last night, short of, I can't remember the times on the clock when they occurred, but I mean, following our two go ahead and from then on out, I mean, I always liken it to riding a wave. Is like if you got it just right and you're up on the top, the crowd's driving it. Like it makes the work as a capo simple. I'd say the thing that you have to get is you don't get bucked when it. I've seen a lot of talk today about. I think what a lot of people really seem to enjoy is the "You need Messi" chant that cropped up. I will say this in case Lucho Costa were to ever hear this and it does turn out he's mad. The Knights of the Bailey did not start that.
Washing your hands of it.
Yes, I wash my hands, and maybe some people I'm not saying we didn't participate, but those moments where, I mean, the crowd becomes its entity and drives itself, and whatever takes hold is there. And sometimes then you're like, oh man, we got to make sure we keep this on track because that's also the thing. We're still brand new. Like, I can't even say brand new. I mean, it's 8 years now in terms of the club's age, but we still new faces all the time. And what people think works pops up. But I mean, a good night in a stadium is where like you are not dragging people along. They get what you're there for. And I think last night was this testament of like the city understood this magnitude and like how wonderful it really was that like this wasn't a scripted thing of like, how do you get all those pieces to fall into place to create a battle like those two in this position for that seat on the table? The serendipity of it is beautiful. And I mean, yeah, just phenomenal.
Yeah, you have all of the season, half of the season, I should say, has been building to this game, and everything goes right in the game. Everything goes right sort of before the game, right? The United States is knocked out early from the Copa America. Argentina continues through. Uruguay continues through. The right red and yellow card suspensions happen at the right moment. It was sort of the perfect storm for what should have been and ultimately was an amazing party atmosphere in TQL Stadium. What I have really enjoyed seeing, because I get to be a nomad in TQL Stadium. I rarely, if ever, am sitting in the same seat twice in TQL. I feel confident myself in saying I've sat and watched an entire game in the most number of seats out of anybody. And it's a weird title to claim, but I'll claim it if somebody wants to challenge me. I will compare ticket stubs, but what I have seen growing over time is the sha-la-la after a goal celebration. This is a celebration, if people aren't familiar with its origins, started actually away at Pittsburgh in the USL days. You can catch a glimpse of the very first sha-la-la as the credits roll on the USL broadcast that is still up on YouTube. And if I remember, I'll link it in the show notes here. But I have seen the stadium slowly pick up this chant and slowly but surely embrace the arm movements, the song itself. Is that intentional from the Knights, from your perspective, or has this sort of grown, or dare I say, organically? Is this something that the crowd's picking up on?
And that word, it's always in these contexts, it's so gross sometimes, but frankly, it fits. I mean, nights, we are constantly drawing. I mean, we've especially with Max Ellerby's experience and knowledge that he's brought in terms of like kind of scouring the world for their chance and seeing things like that, and then all the other creative minds that have been a part of this. We try lots of stuff, and I mean, God knows we've got plenty of failures to be able to like put on our resume. But when there are certain ones that click, and then we can also say we're going to keep driving this, the group gets tighter around it. And then there's even been the communications with the club itself when they just kind of appreciate that it happens and they're saying, hey, you guys, like, what do you want to do with that? Can we help you in any way? Which we're like, no, we got this. But but at the same time, I think that like almost just reaffirmation about like what it means to the boys, what they're seeing around the stadium, because it's also very easy as a night to get lost kind of in the match, like, and be very absorbed into that. But when you can get your head up or other people can look up for you and then look around and see that grow. And I mean, I think that's people wanting to be a part of something bigger and realizing that like that's what is making, or is playing a part of what is making this city great and known for soccer. So, I mean, that feels organic to me.
Yeah. Oh, completely. And like I said, it's been fun to see the slow adoption of that around the stadium. There to this day, we're getting more and more. Again, I can speak to this because I've seen this everywhere. You're getting more general adoption of the different chants, or at least clapping along to the different chants and things like that. But for the Shalala in particular, it's such an iconic moment these days on social media to be sharing the FC Cincinnati Bailey after a goal. Feels like 6 goals in one game is sort of the Shalala boot camp if you were somehow a casual fan at that stadium. That was a good introduction to the post-goal celebration song, I would say.
And maybe my next opening at a Corteo is like, if you tell me you don't know the words, you weren't at this last match, because I know we sang this a whole lot.
Yeah, exactly. So a question I threw out there on Twitter, half joking, half serious. And if you don't have the answer, that's fine. I know who has the answer. How many goals worth of smoke is stocked at the Bailey?
Oh, you may have to ask that source. What I can say is the San Jose match, was that last year or 2 years ago? When it was like 5-1, I think was our final in that.
I think that one ended 6-1 as well.
So we ran out of smoke in that one. And so I'm thinking they reset the minimum like on hand. But I do know they still stay well stocked, but I have no idea how they're setting the pars.
So one more goal, we might not have had smoke, is what I am hearing.
Yeah. Honestly, yeah. Feel like, can we waft anything back in that we already did? Or we got any fireworks left on the roof from like before the 4th? Start blowing something off.
Yeah. Or, when goal 5 goes in, you set off half as many smoke bombs, right? Just hold a couple in reserve, right?
Yeah. Well, as much as I'd love to think that, if it was somebody's job to like set it out and say, make your best pick on what you think is going to happen tonight, I don't know who would have guessed that one. I'd like to think there are people that would have taken that bet, but I mean, that we couldn't have asked for better. And, I'll even throw in just this other goal moment of being able to roll into halftime with Shalala. Like, that was such an amazing moment.
Yeah.
There was almost a slight chance somebody had suggested a pivot from that chant. And there was just a recognition of like, no, this is going to stand out in this moment as they walk off the room, and like being able to bring that, like, it's not even the end, but like talk about finishing at least halfway on an incredibly high note. And then they brought it all the way home.
Yeah. Oh, and I saw comments about that online as well, that the Shalala going into the halftime break was like quite the moment. Everybody was, like you said, riding that wave into halftime. Just an awesome moment. And again, one of those like little subtle things where I know not everybody is thrilled at the idea of like people holding megaphones yelling at them, is what I guess they interpret it as. But controlling those little moments right there, or pushing the crowd in one way or the other, does produce those moments which just help make the atmosphere that much more focused. And it makes a better, I don't know, on in stadium support, I think. And I'm incredibly appreciative of your work, everybody in the Knights, everybody who even bothers to clap along or, even make a half-hearted noise in the Bailey. It all contributes to that on-field performance from the team. Like the club has said this time and time again, that the players feed off of that environment, that players want to come to Cincinnati because of that environment. It is incredible. So I do want to pivot ever so slightly away from last night, but I am still curious here. If somebody was watching on TV, or again, if that was their first game and they saw what was happening in the Bailey and they thought, my God, I need to be a part of that. Whatever that is, I need to be a part of it. How should they do that?
It's an awesome question. And I mean, I certainly hope that people out there are becoming inspired on that, because, it takes a lot of work. It's a lot of pieces that go into this. So the first thing I tell anybody is make sure that you've joined your supporter group. So whatever the one it is, they should all have the ability to reach out to us and help get you established, at least in terms of a conduit. But one of the requirements for the Knights of the Bailey, at least, is that you have to be a member of a supporter group. But again, whichever one it is, find the one that works for you. For the purposes of the Knights of the Bailey, it's in the name, the Bailey, is you also need to be a season ticket holder for that space. Now, the thing I throw in there, though, is that we've had plenty of people that haven't been, and that what this is, we'll bring up that gross term organic in, is that Knights of the Bailey is a spirit. This is the idea of like, clapping is playing a part, and everybody that wants to do something that makes that space better is what we're looking for. So that doesn't mean that it has to end with that. I'm all for coming up with new ideas on how we bring people in and eventually make this a way that we can seed, the Bailey, but for 25,000 people, because that's the end goal, is that everybody in there becomes a Bailey. A Bailey surrounds the team and protects it as well as defends it. And so, yeah, we can do our thing down there, but, it looks different, I think, in every spot of the stadium. And we need people that can see those perspectives from other places and figure out how best to put it in. I've never sat there, but I imagine me showing up in First Financial with a megaphone might irritate some people.
It wouldn't go over well, I'll tell you that much.
And I would expect that. But, if like somebody's over there, a person who was a former Knight, Chris Marshall, I believe, sits over in that area. And that guy brings energy every match. And I have no doubt that that's been infectious to others. And again, this is an effort that's going to take 25,000 people. And but right now we do it with, we got a group of about 60 in total. And I'd say maybe half of that are like really full-time engaged people, and some others, they come and go, or, when they're away at school or whatever it is they're doing. But put it all in a nice little package, join your SG, and then tell them to reach out to the Knights, and we can start building from there.
Yeah. Awesome. And yeah, I mean, you're being very diplomatic, and I'm very appreciative of that. I will say that as a member of the Pride, and I've only ever been a member of the Pride, but I can vouch for them as well. Great group of people. If you're looking for one to get started with, I would suggest going there. But as Reece said, they all have a different vibe, a different flavor, a different bar that they meet at before games. So feel free to take a sampling and see what tickles your fancy. Reece, thank you so much for coming on here. Any parting words for the 12 listeners of the podcast after a match like that?
You know what? This is going to be the corniest thing I do, but Please. I just saw the numbers on what they seem to suggest our new record in stadium for the loudest chant It was 124, 125 decibels.
Ooh.
And it was us sending off the red card with a, hey, 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 goodbye. I'll close on that.
Oh my God. Doing the hey hey goodbye to Sergio Busquets as the loudest chant in TQL history is the greatest piece of trivia I have ever heard.
That's the one.
Reece, I can't think of a better way to end this, man. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thanks for having me, man.
There we go. And again, a huge thank you to Reece for jumping on. Always good to talk with Reece. He's very knowledgeable and somebody you should absolutely reach out to if you are at all interested in getting more involved in all of this, because he is somebody that definitely was not a part of it from the very beginning and managed to make himself very a part of it these days. So good resource if you're looking for a way in on how to be a better fan. That's what I'm going to say. How to be a better fan. Go talk to Reece. Now in part 3 here, do want to answer your Patreon questions. But before we get to that, Grayson, some late breaking news. A couple of days as of recording, Miles Robinson not going to be with us for that much longer. Please explain to the people what is happening here.
Yeah, so according to multiple reports, so we'll say Pat Brennan and Tom Bogert, among others, have reported this. Miles has been selected for as one of the 3 overage players for the Olympics. The first Olympic game is July 24th against France. And so what Pat has reported is that Miles will leave after the July 13th game against Charlotte, and he'll miss the games against Chicago on July 17th and Red Bulls on July 20th. And then I assume he'll miss all or most of League's Cup as well. I've not looked out ahead to all the dates of the Olympic tournament, but he would certainly miss, I think, the 2 group games. So I would say it's a fair bet that he just is not going to participate in League's Cup, which the League's Cup point, not that big a priority for me. I do think it's a shame that he is missing 2 games in the league.
2 games hurts. Yeah.
Potentially if he does, because I don't see why he can't at least play that game on the 17th and then fly out to Paris after that. It's a shame for a number of reasons. Like the big one is he's the only player who will have been selected for both Copa America and the Olympics. So we had to give him up for Copa America. He missed a bunch of games, played 0 minutes with the national team at Copa America.
Yeah.
Didn't even play in any of the warm-up games.
Ugh.
So he's missing time with the team to no benefit for the national team. And it's not like and if he's playing with the national team and, he's doing like an audition for European transfers, that's one thing.
Yeah.
If they're not going to use him and then they're going to shit the bed in the group and like not just look bad, but then I think that stink probably gets on the players who you deemed not good enough to get on the field.
Right. These guys were worse than the guys who couldn't get out of the group. Right.
Yeah. So I think I'm peeved at US soccer.
Yes.
No other team has to put up with this. Like literally a bunch of, so the Olympics is not a mandatory call up. No. So like PSV said, with our players, Pepe and Malik Tillman, you can have them for Copa America, or we'll release them for the Olympics, but you can't use them for both. PSV is not even in season right now.
They're not. Half of these guys are on vacation. Yeah.
So it's, I really feel like no other team has to put up with this. And I think it's a bit disrespectful on the part of US soccer for the domestic competition for them to do this.
Yeah.
It's going to suck him being out given the state of the center back room. The 17th is before the window opens. The 20th is after the window opens. Query whether you're likely to get a new center back in like the day the window opens, the 18th, and he's ready to start on the 20th.
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't heard anything about specific targets yet.
We haven't heard a center back name.
Like if he's coming from out of the country, that's a tough ask.
You'd assume, yeah.
But anyway, I don't blame Miles for accepting the call up. It's pretty cool to play in the Olympics, and I don't really blame the team for, I assume, reluctantly and regretfully letting him go and not standing in the way of him to play for the US in the Olympics. I just want to know, like, what's the big deal? Like, why can't he play the 17th?
Yeah. Like, you could maybe understand the Red Bull game because it is right up against the tournament there for sure. But they don't get this long for most of the regular international windows to sort of prepare with the team and whatnot. And, maybe that's why they're doing it, because they don't normally get that much time, but it is frustrating. And I'm of two minds with it. Like, on one hand, I'm frustrated with it because the Olympics on the men's side, yes, it's a cool opportunity. No, you don't get to do it. Often the best athletes of all time get usually one, maybe two shots at an Olympic. So I totally understand the appeal of the event. But in the context of soccer, it is absolutely a lesser minor tournament. It is not seen as some great success. The only Olympics that matter are the couple of them from the 1920s that Uruguay claims as World Cup titles. You should go look up that controversy at some point. But that's the only time anybody actually cares about the Olympics. And it's frustrating that it comes at the expense once again of FC Cincinnati's regular season, which, as we've seen, is very much in the hunt and on the pace for a supporter shield, which is a major trophy and would be really cool to win back to back. That does not happen often. And this is a desperate position of need for the team. It's frustrating that Miles is wanting to go. It's frustrating that the team let him go. Now, that being said, I'm of two minds with this. The other mind is, and this is something that Chief said on Twitter, so I'm just going to steal his take here. His team is run by Noonan and Albright, by two guys who have been in the U.S. men's national team program. They get it. That this has clearly been a team that guys in and around and sniffing the national team want to be a part of. It's probably related to this, that these guys understand the appeal. They have a good relationship with the federation, and it's unfortunate, but if we want this team to be as successful as it has been up to this point, we should probably make peace with the fact that we are going to play super, super nice with the federation in making these sweetheart deals, making these agreements, and ultimately recruiting the types of players that are going to be asked to play in these games, be it regular first team, national team call-ups for Copa Americas and World Cups, or Olympic call-ups, U23 World Cups, U19 World Cups, whatever it is. I would expect this to happen more often. And just to continue to steal ideas, because I have nothing original to say, a point from Joseph Mamey, that this is a differentiator that Cincinnati can offer teams or can offer players that New York and Miami and LA, sure they can, but it's something that Cincinnati can put front, at the top of the pitch, as it were, to a player that hopefully is able to recruit a guy, maybe a young Venezuelan playing in Ukraine. Hey, you know what? Come with us. And if you get a call up to a Youth World Cup game, we will absolutely let you go, even if you've become a nailed on starter. That might be the difference between him playing for us and him playing for NYCFC or LA Galaxy. So I'll make peace with it, but I'm very frustrated by it. So I don't know. Is there anybody else's thoughts I should steal on this one, Grayson?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not. It's they're going to have to manage through the center back situation. They'll do their best. I'm not thrilled at the idea that like the best argument for a player signing with FC Cincinnati is a promise that you won't have to play for FC Cincinnati very often.
You're going to love Cincinnati. You'll never be here.
Yeah. That's, I mean, like,
yeah,
I want the pitch to be we're a professional organization that prioritizes winning. And we're going to put the best possible team on the field and we're going to win lots and lots of trophies. And we have the best stadium in the league and yada, yada, yada. Right.
Right.
That's what I want to hear. But, I'll be rooting for Miles at the Olympics. And you know what? If they come away from the Chicago and Red Bull games all right,
it won't matter.
It won't matter.
Yeah. Yeah. In terms of Leagues Cup, this is actually funny. Looking at the soccer tournament for the Olympics in the men's group. So the group stages start on July 24th. The entire tournament will be over with the gold medal match being played on August 9th. That is the same day as the round of 32 kicking off in Leagues Cup. In theory, Miles Robinson would only miss the group stages and potentially, and this is if the U.S. plays in the Gold Cup game or the gold medal game, which is unlikely. I honestly have no idea how the youth teams stack up. We are one of the better teams in the group, but even if the U.S. makes the gold medal game, Miles could potentially be back by the round of 16 if that is something that he and the team are interested in. If the U.S. is knocked out well before that, he could potentially be back for at least the entire knockout rounds of the Leagues Cup. So
I would count him out for the tournament.
Yeah.
The nice thing about it is you hopefully have, by the time the tournament starts, a couple of acquisitions in.
True.
So, use it as an opportunity to work with those guys, work with those guys. I mean, maybe you keep Miles on the roster, and if you progress to like the semifinals or final,
yeah,
he becomes an option.
Yeah, the final being August 25th. If the U.S. were to, for some reason, not make it out of the group stage or get knocked out in the first round of the knockout tournament, that would be a month of him not playing. With throw in the Copa as well, he would have only played like 3 games over the course of 2 months. I would suspect he'll play some minutes if the U.S. doesn't advance very far. And to wrap us up, because honestly, I'm just behind on some June questions. I want to finish us off with some Patreon questions, get us out of here. Okay, that is good. We've got questions from the Patreon. If you would like to make some irresponsible financial decisions and give us a couple of bucks a month, we'd be incredibly grateful. And it will make your life infinitely more happy. I can promise you that. I can't promise you that. You can give us a couple of bucks on Patreon. There's a link in the description of this show, or you can Google it, search around. And once a month, you can ask us a question. We will eventually get to answering it. And so I want to finish this up with a couple of June questions. Grayson, this one comes from Darren Russell. In the spirit of TST, that's how long I've been sitting on some of these questions. What players from the 2019 MLS team or 2018 USL team do you think Noonan and staff could have gotten more production out of in MLS? So thinking back on that transition period, who do you think could have benefited the most from a Pat Noonan, Chris Albright coaching staff bump?
Well, we know Nick Hagland.
Yeah, it's check. Alvis Powell, check.
Alvis Powell. Trying to think of all who. 18. I really don't think anybody, to be honest.
Michael Lahoud or
I think Kendall.
Yeah,
I think Kendall would be nice on this team.
I mean, any of the center backs that
would have been better.
Yeah, FCC's the center back whisperers these days. They turn all of these guys into gold and turn everybody into center backs. So, would Joe Zhao have been a better wing back under Noonan?
That's the question. When did he leave after 21?
I think Zhao showed up with Ron Jans in that 2019 summer window.
I think Joe Zhao would have taken to the wing back position as Noonan plays it.
Yeah.
Better than he took to the fullback position.
Yeah. Vermeer did make one start under Pat Noonan in the Open Cup in 2022 against the Pittsburgh Riverhounds.
What?
I'm pretty sure. Now I gotta look this up.
This does not sound true. Oh, you're right.
Boom. Was it against Pittsburgh?
I don't know. It's being slow. It was against New England. We lost 5-1.
That's right. Okay. So Roman, I think, got his first start against Pittsburgh. I think it was that one in 22.
Yeah, maybe. That sounds right.
Because
that was the Alvaro Barreal breakout game.
Yes, and
it's also when we got to be in pitch view for $40.
That's right. They've never made that mistake again.
Honestly, probably any of the attackers. I guess I think that.
That's controversial because it seems like they struggle with getting consistent production out of attacking players other than Lucho.
Yeah, well, so I think specifically who I have in mind is Kekuta Mane.
Mane is a good call. He's older at this point, but would Ledesma have been even better in a Noonan system?
No. Because I don't think this is why I also discard Kenny Safe.
Ooh, okay.
I don't know how much
more.
You say you look at Ledesma and you're he was kind of our proto Lucho, and Lucho's been really good.
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe Ledesma would have been better. They would have found they would have put him in a role where he would have been even more effective, but he wasn't as good. He was near the end of his career by 2019. Right. And then,
well, not according to Ledesma. I think he played professionally for 5 more years, but yes.
And then with Lucho, the stuff that makes him special isn't really due to Pat Noonan's coaching.
Right.
Noonan has put him in better situations to succeed, and given him a system that all the players around him play better.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, primarily, I think the center backs.
Yeah. Yeah. Forest Lasso. That could have been fun. Mike Vesti asks, if tomorrow a team of aliens arrives and plays a game against Columbus, or pick whichever rival you'd prefer, to decide the fate of Earth, it is destroyed. Earth is destroyed if the aliens win. Who do you root for?
I root for the aliens. Doesn't matter. Whether I root for the aliens or for Columbus, the result's going to be the same. So if I root for the aliens and the aliens win, no one's going to know.
Yeah.
If I root for the aliens and the aliens lose, I get to live. And I get to hold it over everybody's head that, like, yeah, not even then.
When the chips were on the line, or everything was in, it was Nancy Ball that saved humanity.
Yeah, I would say the aliens were a bunch of scrubs. Anybody would have beat them.
USL talent, aliens showing up. Yeah, it's not going to work. I would be interested to see, like, how the aliens came to understand the sport. You know, have they been watching the sport from afar? What managers did the aliens decide to learn from? Is this a Monstars situation? Have they stolen the talent of, say, the English national team, or in this case, the French national team, since neither one of them seems to be able to win?
The part about that scenario that I find most enticing,
okay,
is the Twitter discourse around the game and, like, leading up to it, and, like, you know, how the teams are picked, how, you know, what, you know, who should be starting, whether, like, somebody else should be the coach, you know, like,
this is a good call. So depending on what the parameters of the match are, at one point or a certain point, like, Joe Biden or whoever may be the U.S. president when this game is going on is probably going to have to sit down with the Columbus crew to discuss the strategy. Like there needs to be a little bit of second guessing here on a scale that we've never seen before.
Yeah. And you get like Matt Doyle being like, no, you need Darlington Nagbe on this team. And you get like USMNT Bukaki on Twitter saying, you know, these are all MLS scrubs. You know, we need to get like, you know, Leonardo Bertoni in there because he plays in Europe.
Somebody who has briefly touched their feet onto the soil of Europe. Does the rest of the world offer players for free? Like, is Mbappe offered to the Columbus crew in order to maintain humanity? Or, again, I don't fully understand the rules.
That's a good question. And how do you deal with the visa process? Like, if the game's in like 7 days, right? Like,
you can expedite it, but like, do you get sued? Right.
We're just open borders now. So here's what would happen. Okay, so Joe Biden would be president. He would.
Let's assume this is happening like a week from today.
Yeah,
it's been
so
announced.
Joe Biden would be president. You get the team would come. The team, they send the crew out. A bunch of players would get free transfers. Biden would just let them come in.
Yep.
And they'd play and they would beat the aliens. And then you'd end up with like it somehow being like bad for him. And it becomes like a thing where he like opened up the borders.
Of course.
And you know,
he personally intervened to override our standing visa rules. Yes.
Yep. And it was unnecessary. The Columbus crew could have beat the aliens without the immigration loosening.
Yeah.
You know, maybe there were never aliens in the first place.
Have you ever seen
an alien?
A lot of things get called into question, especially too, because it involves aliens, which are definitely not mentioned in the U.S. Constitution. That's not an official act, I wouldn't think. So any protections the president may think he has here, out the window.
It depends. I would say providing input on the lineup, maybe not an official act, but forcing the State Department to approve a visa, I would say that's an official act. Okay,
because you can imagine the lawsuits that would come from this, because the Supreme Court has also had a war against standing recently, so it's good. This is fun stuff.
Does 11 Yanks have standing to sue to replace the national team coach?
Is 11 Yanks standing near a Thai child when he files the lawsuit? These are questions we have to ask.
Maybe not. Nobody.
He might know. That is. Oh, okay. Sorry. Excuse me. I thought I was out of questions. I'm not. Drew asks, if you had to hand over the keys to the Cincy postcast, which FCC player or players would you trust the most to continue the podcast? As with all of these questions, I feel like this needs a you can't pick Nick Hagland disclaimer, because it's probably Nick Hagland.
So it's really hard to say, but I mean, Evan is in the running.
He's got the most minutes on the podcast of all of the players. So that's good.
I feel like Malik Pinto.
Ooh.
And then he probably also developed some type of Twitch presence, and then makes it way bigger than
smart
anybody else could, because he's like a Zoomer.
Yeah. One of the biggest Madden influencers out there is a guy that had a cup of coffee as like a third string quarterback for the Packers. And I feel like he could do a similar thing with like a FIFA career with a guy who was like made a couple of appearances in MLS. Yeah, that makes sense. Of the, maybe not the postcast, but of FCC players that are most likely to start a podcast when they're done playing, Matt Miazga feels like a shoo-in. But
I could see Yedlin doing it.
Yeah.
So Yedlin, I don't know the status of any of it, but I know at one point at least he had like he had like a close label that he was putting out. He's been on, he's been on some kind of longer form soccer kind of podcasts. He's really good at social media.
Yeah.
He's a real interesting guy. Been all over the place. He would be somebody who I think would not only potentially do one, but it would be quite good.
Yeah. Yeah. Similar to Miazga in that, like, he had a huge playing career with a bunch of teams. He would have a huge wealth of former teammates as like a super easy guest list to start running down, right? That would be interesting.
I mean, Yedlin was on Hector Bellerin's podcast, I want to say.
There you go. All right, sure.
I think he went on with Jermaine Jones, although all the Jermaine Jones ones were scrubbed because I think people told some hard truths about U.S. soccer on those. And Jermaine found a career in coaching and in doing U.S. soccer TV. I don't remember if Yedlin went on The Crack or not. But
ooh, yeah. I thought he did.
I don't think he did. Cameron did.
Oh, maybe that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, I don't think he did, but I know he went on Bellarine's, and I'm pretty sure he went on pretty sure he went on Jermaine Jones's.
Man, what a flash in the pan Jermaine Jones as a podcaster was.
He had Christian, he had DeAndre, he had, I think, Jeff Cameron, he had Eddie Johnson.
Yeah.
I mean, he was, they spilled the tea, folks.
Yeah, it was great. It was before anybody had a publicist jump in and say, hey, y'all, stop it. Okay, last question here. Then we'll wrap it up. David Ziegler asks, you have to put a Buc-ee's in the greater Cincinnati area. Where are you putting it? And what Cincinnati flair are you adding to it? You're putting it up in Liberty Township, somewhere with absolutely no culture whatsoever. And you're going to have them serve Geta. You're going to have them zag when everybody else thinks they're going to zig. There's not going to be Skyline or Cincinnati-style chili, but Geta is a funny one that they could do. You could do that in Northern Kentucky. I understand that. That's probably where it makes more sense, but we're putting it up in Liberty Township. Grayson, what say ye?
Sounds fine. I don't
Perfect.
I don't care about Buc-ee's.
Maybe one day when I'm an old man, I'll explain what the Buc-ee's joke was that somehow tied us to it, but that's not today. And let me just say, it wasn't the Buc-ee's you were thinking, but I appreciate the humor around it 100%. Grayson, that's going to do it for this episode, the 6-1 demolition of Inter Miami.
Well, I'm not sure it was a demolition. We got to see what the G Plus says.
I did like the FOTMob scores of everybody are all incredible. Yedlin only gets a 6.7, which I will say is good for the fourth best performance from Miami player. Busquets getting the incredibly rare sub-3 rating from FOTMob, a 2.9. That is hard to achieve. So yeah, we'll see what the G Plus says. We'll see what the XG plus minus AXG GOT says. But until then, Grayson,
fuck Columbus.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Cincy Postcast. It is a production of The Post Cincy. You can check us out at thepostcincy.com or just click a link in the description to check out some of our written work. It also has links to our social media accounts across all sorts of different platforms, including YouTube, where we are trying to do more and more video content. Please, dare I say it, like and subscribe and leave a comment. But no, that would be really, really helpful. I also want to give a thank you to Jim Trace and the Makers. They're a local Cincinnati band who provided all of the music for this episode. We love having them on board. You can check them out. Again, link in the description of this episode to find out where they might be playing shows next or where you can listen to more of their music. Also want to give a massive, massive thank you to the awesome and very attractive patrons over on Patreon. It is a voluntary subscription that people take out with no real promise of anything extra that keep this show afloat. And we are so, so thankful to those of you that have decided to take that commitment. If you do like the show, or at least just want to engage with other people who have listened to the show and want to talk about FC Cincinnati, MLS, soccer, or really anything else, you can go on over to Discord. Again, link in the description. Lots of links in the description where you can find a link to the Discord. That's where we are keeping the conversation going 24/7. It feels like it's a really fun group of people in there just talking about FC Cincinnati. And like I said, just about everything else. And finally, I'll say it. If you liked this episode, and given the fact that you've made it all the way to the end, I have to assume you either like it or for some reason cannot reach the stop button. Please share this episode with a friend or family member or someone who likes FC Cincinnati. The best way for us to grow is from a personal recommendation from somebody who likes it. And if that's you, please tell other people. And if you don't have any friends, feel free to give us a review on whatever your podcast platform of choice is. We'll take anything we can get. But again, a huge, huge thank you to everybody for listening to this show. I am blown away that anybody listens to this. So again, I well and truly mean this. Thank you so much for listening.